So this is a 1995 Defender 90 station wagon. I purchased it in 2002. I graduated from Virginia Tech in 1994, and Land Rover Richmond had this exact vehicle sitting in the showroom that I was dead set on buying. My father sort of wisely convinced me that I was getting a degree with no debt. Why would I want to get right out of school and the first thing I do, get a car payment? So I decided to put the purchase off a few years, and I bought this in 2002. I was working a lot of hours, and every available weekend I had, I was going to Land Rover rallies in my 71 Series 2A. And some of those rallies were 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours away, and in a 4-cylinder Land Rover, made for a long trip. So my wife kind of gave me the blessing to get a Defender 90, and I knew I wanted a 1995 station wagon. And so in 1995, the last 500 trucks that came off the assembly line, they made station wagons, which means it has an aluminum hardtop and it's 6-passenger. So it's got 4 inward-facing seats on the inside, 2 in the front. The 95 station wagons are kind of the oddball, and that's what you want. They had all the nice things in it, like roll-up windows, cloth interior, air conditioning, and a CD player.
So how long did they make this particular configuration?
So in 1993, Land Rover brought over 500 trucks that were called Defender 110s. So this is considered a 3-door truck. Those are all 5 doors. So what we would call a 4-door. So those were all 110-inch wheelbase, 4-door trucks with a 3.5 liter V8, and had the full safety devices, roll cage and roof rack and everything. They all came in Alpine white. You couldn't get any options on them. They came one way. In 94, they started importing Defender 90s. All the Defender 90s in 94 were 5 speeds. You can tell the difference between a 94 and other years because the tail lights are square instead of round. A few of the 94s that they brought over, they're called Port of Entry, POE. They put fiberglass hardtops on them, and they were not painted the body color. They were a grayish black fiberglass hardtop with a liftgate. Then 95 came. All of them were convertibles, went to round tail lights, 5-speed transmission, went to a 3.9 liter V8, and they all had vinyl interior, the sliding windows. Air conditioning was an option, but you couldn't get the CD player. You couldn't get a lot of the swanky stuff. And then the last 500, they made station wagons, and it came with like a houndstooth cloth interior, like I said, the CD player, air conditioning, and roll-up windows. They made 81 white ones. Then they had Arles blue, green, and red. Those were the only colors you could get. I knew I wanted white. Arles blue was a close second. I was able to acquire a list of the owners of all 81 white ones and just started going down the list. I found a guy in Plum Island, Connecticut that had this truck. I flew and looked at several of them. The guy had this. I flew to Connecticut. He drove it to the airport. I drove it around. It met all my standards, I guess, if you will. And I paid about $8,000 more in 2002 than I could have bought the truck for brand new in 1994. So even then, the prices were going up.
Yeah.
Not to the extent that they are today, because it's ridiculous. As I kid my wife often, probably a bad joke, that my vehicle's on my 401k. I purchased the vehicle. I gave the guy a check, made arrangements to have it shipped down here, and lo and behold, it showed up on Mother's Day. Another one of the running jokes in our house, Michelle calls it her truck because I got it for Mother's Day, since it showed up on Mother's Day. So I then had this thought that I was going to keep it completely stock. So these cars came with alloy wheels that I hate. I can't stand them. So I got steel wheels like they would have come on in Europe. I did replace the springs and shocks, so it's got just barely a little bit more lift than factory. I obviously put bigger tires on it. I put the rock sliders and the front winch bumper and the winch, a whole bunch of underbody protection. I started driving this to most of the rallies. I do drive it, I use it, I drive it off-road. I'm extremely careful with it. A lot of people are surprised that I do what I do in it. As long as you go and you drive it prematurely off-road and you don't take it beyond its capabilities, which, I mean, this truck will do way more than I'm comfortable doing, you can have a lot of fun with them. If you go to most of the rallies and you ask people kind of what's the Holy Grail of the Defender 90s, they're going to say the 95 Station Wagon, because it's the 5-speed transmission. It's the traditional, the Americans would say it's a very underpowered V8. This truck only has about 190 horsepower and it's got about 250 foot-pounds of torque. You know, when you're off-road, what you'll find is, you know, you go to some of these rallies, you will literally spend 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours on the trail, never getting out of second or third gear low. You're just creeping. You don't need 300 horsepower to do that. I was willing to pay a premium for a really nice truck. Some of the trucks I looked at had been repainted. You know, they had been kind of ragged out. Those trucks didn't interest me. I wanted one that had original paint. It still has the original paint on it. Did not suffer from all the usual rust gremlins that these trucks suffer from. Like I said, I probably paid a premium, but I got what I wanted, and here we are. I've done a lift. I put a stainless steel exhaust system on it, Old Man Emu springs and shocks, a lot of underbody frame protection, all the usual stuff that you would want to do when you're going to take it off-road and you don't want it to break on you.
What do you think makes it so unique?
You know, it's an iconic body style. It's completely impractical. Everything about it is just kind of quirky, and that's what makes it fun. I wanted something that was a little unique. I think these look 1,000 times better than a Jeep. It's funny how they kind of designed a body style in 1948, and it didn't change until they stopped producing them in 2016. It's British, so anybody who likes British vehicles, you have to have a sort of appetite for being able to deal with things like, well, maybe this speedometer quit working on the drive over here. Well, probably, you know, chances are 2 more times you drive it, it's going to work. And you can't really explain it. It's just you tend not to freak out when something quits working or a light comes on, because if the check engine light comes on, but it sounds like it's okay, it's probably okay. It's just you can pull a code and find out that really the light came on for no real reason. You know?
I checked the engine, it's still there.
Right. So British vehicles kind of have that reputation. I love the bumper sticker that you see on a lot of these things that say, you know, the reason why the British drink warm beers because they have Lucas refrigerators. So the roof rack was a factory option. It's made by a company called Safety Devices in the UK that makes parts for Land Rovers. The winch bumper, it's a Mantec winch bumper. That's a company in England. I've got Safari Guard rear step bumpers. That was a company that existed here in America that made really nice, high quality aftermarket parts. I've got Rover Time Engineering rear links on the back. You can see how they're bent. That allows your wheel to articulate more. I've got Rover Time Engineering frame sliders. I've got a front skid guard that's a factory option that was actually by Land Rover. I've got a rear skid plate. I've got a transmission skid plate. I've got front and rear diff guards on it. You know, if you use it, things are going to kind of get dented and dinged, you know, but I'm not looking to roll it down the side of a bank and have to deal with that. It's made to be used, and that's what I'm doing. I've got Great Basin's heavy-duty rear axle shafts in the back. It's got a center diff lock from the factory in it, and then I've got front and rear ARB lockers on it. And so when I built the lockers, I've changed the gearing to 411 gearing just because I was going to a little bit taller tire also. The engine is completely stock. I just turned about 80,000 miles coming back from a rally the end of October. The vehicles need to be driven, you know, get them out and enjoy them. Some things that you may not, a lot of people wouldn't know about Land Rovers unless they were into them. So essentially, even on my 66 and even on a lot of the new ones, if it is painted a body color, it is a material, it's not aluminum. Most people would say it's aluminum. It's a material called Burma-Bright, which is very similar to aluminum. So the only thing on the Defender that is steel is the frame and the front bulkhead, which is the pillar between the door and the front fender. Everything else is Burma-Bright. That's good in that it won't rust, but it's bad in that the frames of the doors and the frames of everything else are metal, and they wrap them in Burma-Bright, and of course they get wet and galvanic corrosion begins. And so that is the biggest thing you have to worry about with these trucks. And you can see at the bottom of the doors, you'll start to get some little bubbling and some peeling. There's really not much you can do about it. The early trucks, all the series trucks, the body cappings were galvanized, and then they were put on the tubs. The Defenders, again, the British, I don't understand, they did not galvanize the body cappings before they put them on. So they were just like bare metal. They put them on an aluminum body, and they sprayed the truck all at one time. There's probably not a Defender that's been rained on that you can go and you'll see the paint peeling from the body cappings. One thing I did on this truck is took the hardtop off, which is a small feat. The top is removable. The roof rack comes off, the safety devices roll cage comes off, and it is like 4 million bolts to take apart. But I took the hardtop off, took all the body cappings off, sandblasted them, sent them to a galvanizer in Bristol, and brought them back. Attempted to prep them correctly and paint them the body color. And as you can see, when you look at the pictures or when you look at it, you can see all the body cappings, the galvanizers coming through. That bothers some people, and it used to bother me, but I've kind of gotten over it because so much of it is chipping off now. It just looks like it's galvanized. Yeah. It looks like a series truck because the series trucks all have the galvanized body cappings exposed. Like any car, you go to the Land Rover rallies and those guys that have been in it for a while and are into it, you know, they're all great guys. It's just like the Porsche guys or the Triumph guys. It's just such a good community. It doesn't matter if you're into Land Rovers, if you're into Corvettes, if you're into Ferraris or Volkswagens. We could all sit around and have a beer and talk cars and get along just fine. Yeah. Americans tend to like their cars, even if they're not American cars. There's a lot of car people that are pretty passionate about whatever particular model or make of car that they're into, but you can get a whole group of us together that all like completely different cars, and it's like we're kind of kindred spirits, if you will.